Welcome back. In this episode, we're covering trees and construction, which makes up about 9% of the Certified Arborist exam. This domain tests whether you understand how construction activities affect trees and whether you can plan, predict, protect, and respond appropriately. The exam is very clear on one thing. Most construction-related tree damage is preventable. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how arborists assess construction impacts, design tree protection plans, and recommend treatments when damage occurs. Let's start with the big picture. Construction impacts trees in three primary ways: roots, trunks and branches, and soil. Most damage happens below ground, even when symptoms show up later in the canopy. Construction phases and planning. The exam emphasizes that tree protection should begin early, not after damage occurs. Construction phases include planning and design, pre-construction, active construction, and post-construction. The best exam answers show arborist involvement before construction starts. If a question asks when protection is most effective, earlier is almost always better. Tree protection zones and critical root zones. Two key concepts you must know: tree protection zone, TPZ, critical root zone, CRZ. These define the area around a tree that must be protected to maintain health and stability. On the exam, watch out for encroachment into these zones increases risk. Root disturbance within these zones often leads to decline or failure. Protection measures should be clearly defined and enforced. If a question asks how to protect a tree, fencing and access control around the TPZ are often part of the correct answer. Species-specific tolerance. Not all trees respond to construction the same way. Some species tolerate disturbance better than others. The exam expects you to recognize that. Species characteristics matter. Past stress influences resilience. Mature trees are generally less tolerant than young trees. If two answers seem similar, the one that accounts for species vulnerability is usually correct. Common construction impacts. Let's break down how construction affects trees. Root and soil impacts. Soil compaction, root severing, grade changes, altered drainage, and chemical contamination. These are some of the most heavily tested concepts in this domain. Soil compaction reduces oxygen and water availability, often causing delayed symptoms months or years later. Trunk and canopy impacts, mechanical wounding, bark damage, scald and breakage. Even small trunk wounds can become major entry points for decay, especially when combined with root stress. Tree protection measures. The exam focuses on prevention, not reaction. Protection measures include fencing and signage, limiting equipment access, trunk and canopy protection, and soil protection strategies. If a question asks for the best protection method, look for answers that physically prevent damage, not ones that rely on worker caution alone. Roles and responsibilities. The arborist role includes interpreting site plans, recommending protection measures, coordinating with contractors and developers, and monitoring compliance. The exam often tests communication and coordination, not just technical knowledge. Assessing damage and post-construction care. Despite best efforts, damage sometimes occurs. The exam expects you to assess short and long-term impacts, determine whether a tree can recover, recommend appropriate mitigation. Common post-construction treatments include mulching, water management, soil remediation, pest and disease monitoring. In severe cases, removal and replacement may be the correct recommendation, especially if safety or long-term viability is compromised. Risk and stability considerations. Construction damage can affect tree stability, root loss, soil changes, and trunk injuries can all increase failure potential. If a question mentions construction damage and targets, the exam is often testing risk assessment, not just tree health. Exam focus callouts. Watch for these patterns: damage described underground with delayed symptoms, TPZ or CRZ ignored in scenarios, protection plans introduced too late, arborist involvement missing during planning, treatment suggested without assessing risk. If damage could have been prevented, the exam wants you to say so. Rapid review summary. Let's lock it in. Construction affects roots and soil structure. Most damage occurs below ground. Early planning and protection are critical. TPZ and CRZ define protected areas. Prevention is better than mitigation. Post-construction care depends on damage severity and risk. That's trees and construction. If you understand how construction stresses trees and how to prevent that damage, you'll do very well on this section of the exam. Next up, we'll move into tree risk, where structure, defects, and targets come together. Thanks for listening to the Arborist podcast. Let's keep building your arborist knowledge one domain at a time.